To get started on this exercise, you needed to have downloaded the Type Path folder, and inside of the folder they already have an After Effects file that you can launch and open. And if it gives you this warning about it being converted, that's okay. Simply say OK to open up the file. If you're not already in the Dune composition, which I am now, you can double click on the Dune composition from here to get started. The first thing we're going to do is to go up to the Layers drop-down menu and create a new text layer. This is going to put your insertion point right in the center of your screen. I'm going to type the word Dune, and then I'm going to highlight it and go over to my properties or your character panel, and let's set our font to be Arial Black. The size of it is going to be 200 pixels. And while I have it selected, I'm going to set my fill color to be white with a stroke color of none. To bring our characters in just a little bit more, locate the tracking number here and set it to be -110. This will bring our letters a little bit closer together as they move across the screen. With our type established, the next thing we're going to do is to draw a path that follows the curvature of this top dune. To do this, the first thing I would suggest you do is to back out just a little bit so that you can see more than the entire screen. Since I'm already at 144%, I'm going to zoom out to 100% so I can see some of the gray area. Also, in order for this to work, do make sure your Dune layer, your type layer, is selected. And the tool that we're going to use is your pen tool located at the top of your screen. Do make sure you have the regular pen tool and none of the other related ones. With this tool selected, we're going to start our curve by clicking once on the outside edge right here. Move over, then click and drag to create your curved line. Now if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. We're going to fix it just in a moment. Then I can pick up and do one click to complete the curve from here. Again, if your curve is off or if you ever need to make any adjustments, use your selection tool. You can then go in and select whatever point you need to change and move it over and click on the Bezier handles to be able to change this as well. Your curve doesn't have to match the curve of the dune perfectly, just make sure that it follows along that edge and then we'll clean it up later. To make the words snap to this line, go down to your timeline and twirl open the Dune layer. You can notice that we've got a text sub layer, and then we can open up the path options. From the path, we can change it from none to be mask 1. When you do this, you can see your words now snap to that particular area. Now let's animate it along that path. Going back down to your timeline, locate the first margin options and make sure your playhead is set to the 0 frames 0 seconds starting point. If it's not here, you can press the home key on your keyboard to bring it all the way back. If we click on the first frame and then we choose this number and click and drag, this will allow you to move your words, and I'm simply going to drag to the left until my first margin puts the words all the way off the edge of my screen. Since I've turned on my first keyframe at the 0 point, this will be our starting point. Next, I can move my playhead to the very end at 5 seconds, and then return back to my first margin, clicking on the numbers and dragging to the right until our words go all the way off the edge to there. Now, if I was to go up to my preview panel, I can hit play, and you can see how the words move from one side to the other, following along with that path. If we back up our timeline to where we can see the words, you can also start to play around with some of the other options. For instance, if I turn off perpendicular to path, you can see how this takes the letters, and instead of having them follow perpendicular to the path, it keeps them nice and parallel to the path and keeps them straight up and down. So now as it plays through, the words don't turn, they just stay perpendicular to that area. With this done, let's twirl everything closed, and I'm going to click on my dune layer and drag it below the foreground layer so that it's nesting between both of those. Finally, let's change the color of this and add a layer style to it. With the layer selected, we can return to our Properties or Character panel, double-click on your fill color, and set the RGB value to be 20 for R, 10 for green, and 5 for blue. We'll say OK. As this plays, we want to be able to see it and give it a little bit of a highlight that matches the sun that's behind this. To do this, with the layer selected, go up to Layer, down to Layer Styles, and choose Bevel and Emboss. Now layer styles, unlike the effects, aren't controlled up in the Effects panel. Instead, you can find them on your Layers panel. If you scroll to the bottom of this layer, you can see you've got a twirl option now for layer styles, and here's where we can see the bevel and emboss style that we just added to here. As with other things, you can animate any of these styles and what they do along your timeline. In our case, we're not going to animate them, but we are going to change this highlight color by double-clicking on the fill color or single-clicking on it. And we'll set the RGB value with an R value of 255, a G value of 115, and a blue value of 40. And we'll say OK to that. Now it adds a nice little orange glow to the overall thing. Once again, you can press play to test it just to make sure everything works well. The last thing we need to do is to save our file by going to File and Save. You can add your name to this file. So in my case, I'm going to call it Mr. Ivy. Make sure you know where your file is being saved to. In my case, I'm placing it back inside of that type path folder and hit Save. And then we need to render our file. We can go up to File, down to Export, and add it to the render queue. From here, you can set your output mode to be the best quality and high quality, and choose Output to, clicking on the name of it, and make sure you know where it's being saved to. In my case, I'm making this movie on the desktop. The format's going to be a QuickTime movie. We're OK for that. And we can click Render, and in just a few moments, it'll render our movie. Upload this movie and After Effects file to the Canvas page.